guys, my name's Callum. In this video I'll be comparing skill versus capacity deficiencies in two movements in the weight room. So to start with a brief overview, this video will be comparing two athletes performing the back squat, two athletes performing the strict pull-up, and we'll do this by comparing the athletes side by side performing the movement, identifying flaws in the movement, suggesting implications of these flaws, seeking to find out exactly why these flaws are occurring, and doing so deciding if flaws are occurring due to lack of skill or lack of capacity to perform the skill, suggesting interventions to improve the identified flaws and thus improve the execution of the movement, contrasting the reasoning of the flaws between the two athletes, and finally the video will conclude with some interesting insights that I've gained from undertaking this task. So let's start with the back squat. On the left we have athlete A, on the right we have athlete B. Let's start just by observing the movement. Now athlete A has very little experience with this movement, just doing it in yoga, sitting in the bottom position of it, whereas athlete B has a lot more experience with it. However, he's been giving a lot of contradictory information from the people he has been learning the movement from. Okay, so if we start with athlete A, the first flaw we can identify, and this is me being quite critical, but the first flaw we can identify would be foot eversion. So we can see that the right foot starts to come up off the floor at the bottom position there. You can see the little two toes starting to come up off the floor. This is going to mean that he's going to be in a less stable position, and it's going to potentially lead to some increased stresses on the medial aspects of the knee, such as medial collateral ligament or meniscus, and finally reduced force production. The second flaw, which I believe is a follow-on from the first, is going to be knee valgus, and we can see that sometimes the athlete does tend to drop the knees in slightly into that valgus position, and again this is going to lead to medial stresses on the knee and also reduced force production. The final flaw we can see is going to be the thoracolumbar extension during the brace of the movement. Now this is going to lead to a risk of extension-based spine injuries such as spondylolisthesis, and also lead to reduced axial loading capacity if the athlete chooses to acquire this bracing strategy when more load is applied. For athlete B, the first and most obvious lean I would say would be the trunk lean. Some implications of this are going to be high load in the lumbar spine, and it's also going to mean that less loading can occur safely in this movement. The second flaw we can see is inconsistently there's a lack of depth. And the third is going to be that there's going to be lumbar-pelvic flexion during the movement inconsistently. Now I'd pair these two together. First of all, with the lack of depth, the athlete wants to improve his muscular size in the glutes and hamstrings. So for him, not achieving below parallel, it's going to be less functional. For lumbar-pelvic flexion, the implications of this could be some compressive shear loading on the disc of the lumbar spine, so an increased risk of posterior disc bulge. And this is obviously going to mean there's going to be less loading can occur safely for this athlete. The final flaw we identify is going to be an unstable bar position. This can lead to some shifts in bar trajectory, reduction in vertical forces expressed, and it's also going to mean that less loading can occur in the movement, as the athlete does not feel comfortable when more load is applied with the bar in the bar position that he currently acquires. So, starting with the foot eversion, here's some of the interventions we went through. We identified that the issue was a strength issue, so I would class it as a capacity issue. Even with intensive cueing, the athlete was not strong enough to maintain consistently the correct foot position. For the knee valgus, the athlete was able to push the knees out with intensive cueing. However, I feel that as load is increased due to the inversion of the feet, this would also tend to reappear. So I would class it as a skill and capacity deficiency. The incorrect bracing strategy, however, was a skill deficiency, as with a couple of minutes of cueing, the athlete was able to acquire correct bracing strategy. Now for athlete B, we started by looking at some of the capacity deficiencies. So ankle dorsiflexion was okay for the strategy this athlete acquires, back extension was okay. So with correct cueing, the athlete was able to maintain a more upright trunk. Some more physical constraints could be added. For the butt wink, so for the first one, for the trunk lean, I would say it's a skill deficiency. For the butt wink or lumbar pelvic flexion, the athlete appeared to have enough range of motion in flexion, external rotation, internal rotation passively. Also actively, the athlete appeared to have enough range of motion. So we then started to cue the athlete to be able to maintain his position, and he found it quite tricky to dissociate the lumbar pelvic spine and keep it in a neutral position with different tasks. However, with time he was able to perform this. So we then went on to work on some box squats, cueing the athlete to keep that lumbo-pelvic region neutral. We then increased the depth of the box squats. When consistent, we added load, and then we added a pause. And you can see that it was able to maintain a neutral lumbo-pelvic position, more upright trunk, and hit better depth. For the bar position, the athlete had a range of motion, so we simply cued him to keep a better bar position, and this led to an improvement. So I would say it was a skill deficiency. So to compare the two, floor 1 foot eversion, I would suggest to be a capacity and a skill deficiency. Floor 2 being knee valgus, I would suggest to be a capacity and a skill deficiency as well, as a follow on from the first. And floor 3, thoracolumbar extension, I would suggest to be a skill deficiency. For athlete B, trunk lean, I would suggest to be a skill deficiency. Floor 2, I would suggest to be a skill deficiency also, so lumbar-pelvic flexion. Floor 3, also a skill deficiency, and unstable bar position. Floor 4, also an unstable skill deficiency. Also a skill deficiency. Now let's check out the pull-up. So on the left we have athlete A, and on the right we have athlete C. Okay, both athletes are quite experienced with this movement, but let's start with athlete A. So we can see from athlete A that there's a little bit of rotation to the right hand side, lateral shift to the right hand side. Now some implications of this could be uneven loading on the tissues of the upper body involved in the pull. This could lead to increased risk of stress concentrations and muscular imbalance, and also reduced force production for this movement. We can also see some cervical extension at the top of the movement. Second floor, some implications of this could be a shift in centre of mass, and also potentially a reduction in force production. And finally, we can see an unfixed gaze. Some implications of this can be unstable attractor state, which could be problematic with further skill progression. For athlete C, first of all, we can identify that there's an inability to express enough force to produce this movement. Some implications of this: there is a very short range of motion the athlete performs, and it's unlikely to yield much strength improvements. Secondly, we can see excessive neck extension and an unfixed gaze. This is likely to lead to a reduction in force production and also potentially a shift in centre of mass. We can also identify excessive lumbo-pelvic flexion and hip motion. Some implications of this is an uncoordinated shift in centre of mass, and it's going to impair the vertical force expression from this athlete. Overall, there's many unstable states for the execution of this movement. So looking at the interventions, first of all, we cued athlete A to squeeze his knees and feet together, and this identified a little bit of a lateral shift to the right hand side. We then got the athlete to use a mirror to align his body before he started the pull. So he aligned his body using the mirror, then he fixed his eyes on an object, and then he performed the pull. And with the multiple trials, or 2 trials, this enabled the athlete to keep a straighter position. However, I would like to do more trials here and keep a constant eye on it, as it could still be a capacity deficiency, but in this case I would suggest it be a skill deficiency if he's able to maintain straight position with using the mirror as a cue. Secondly, we cued the athlete to pull the chest to the bar and not try and protrude the head forwards over the bar, so not try and get the chin over the bar, but try and pull the chest to the bar. This prevented any cervical extension. Also, we got the athlete to cue his eyes to fix it on an object, and again this allowed him to fix his gaze, which means that them two deficiencies were likely to be skill deficiencies. For athlete C, inability to produce enough force, I would say would to be a skill and capacity deficiency. So some exercises to produce a stable attractor state as well as improve strength for this athlete could be spotted or band assisted pull-ups, isometric pull-ups or eccentric pull-ups. And with these exercises, try and develop stable attractor states of keeping a fixed gaze, neutral head position or cervical position, and also a nice fixed hip position would be how we would cue this athlete. So to compare the two together, athlete A, I would say just to have skill deficiencies. However, again, floor 1 could be a capacity deficiency with further observation. At this point, though, I believe it to be a skill deficiency. Floor 2, cervical extension, would be a skill deficiency. Floor 3, unfixed gaze, would also be a skill deficiency. As an improved understanding, the athlete proved this. For athlete C, I would suggest it be a capacity and a skill deficiency. Flaw 1, inability to express enough force to perform a movement, would be a capacity and a skill deficiency, as they don't have enough strength. Neck extension would be, I think, a skill deficiency, same with hip and lumbar pelvic motion and an unfixed gaze. However, this could be a capacity deficiency, as I haven't seen the other side of the interventions that I've given the athlete, as I work with them online. So to conclude this video, interventions depend on the context of the athlete. Some capacities have a movement-dependent ceiling, such as anthropometrics, cross-sectional area of a muscle, or body mass, and potentially tissue extensibility. However, improving the skill of performing the movement itself has no ceiling, and you can always get better through practice. It can be very time-consuming to assume a capacity deficiency without further assessment, so for example, applying good coaching cues. And finally, I need to buy myself a camera stand and use that to record the videos, especially if I'm using analysis software. Thanks very much for watching, guys. See you soon.